Greetings, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Pour Over Lines. We are joined by my friend John Tang. I'm Arian Cato. Today we'll be discussing a poem by Robert Frost titled The Mending Wall. We'll begin with a reading and then a general introduction and continue with a line-by-line reading. I hope you can enjoy it. This will be episode 1 of 2 dedicated to this poem. Okay, let's begin. I'll just go ahead and read it and then we'll get some general thoughts on it before we do our line by line. Okay. Mending Wall by Robert Frost. Something there is that doesn't love a wall, that sends the frozen groundswell under it, and spills the upper boulders in the sun, and makes gaps even two can pass abreast. The work of hunters is another thing. I have come after them, and made repair, where they have left not one stone on a stone, but they would have the rabbit out of hiding, to please the yelping dogs. The gaps, I mean. No one has seen them made or heard them made, but at spring mending time we find them there. I let my neighbor know beyond the hill, and on a day we meet to walk the line and set the wall between us once again. We keep the wall between us as we go, to each the boulders that have fallen to each. And some are loaves, and some so nearly balls we have to use a spell to make them balance. Stay where you are until our backs are turned. We wear our fingers rough with handling them. Oh, just another kind of outdoor game, one on a side. It comes to little more. There where it is, we do not need the wall. He is all pine, and I am apple orchard. My apple trees will never get across and eat the cones under his pines, I tell him. He only says, good fences make good neighbors. Spring is the mischief in me. And I wonder if I could put a notion in his head. Why do we make good neighbors? Isn't it where there are cows? But here there are no cows. Before I built a wall, I'd ask to know what I was walling in or walling out, and to whom I was like to give offense. Something there is that doesn't love a wall, that wants it down. I could say elves to him, but it's not elves exactly, and I'd rather he said it for himself. I see him there, bringing a stone grasped firmly by the top in each hand, like an old stone savage armed. He moves in darkness, as it seems to me, not of woods only and the shade of trees. He will not go behind his father's saying, and he likes having thought of it so well. He says again, good fences make good neighbors. Mending Wall by Robert Frost. Okay, so, John, if you wouldn't mind, do you think you could just give a brief idea of what this poem is about or talking about?
I think overall what Robert Frost is trying to get at is about maybe community or maybe about society. So for example, some key words that just stuck out to me that makes me think this is words like the gaps and the synergy between the rabbits and the dogs, and then also too, when he's questioning the purpose of the wall, I think he's trying to build a relationship with his neighbor. So I think really, maybe the way I would approach it is maybe there's like a little bit of community, maybe there's connection is what he's looking for, the speaker in the poem. Yeah, but what's your take on it, Arian?
I agree that this poem does talk a lot about community and the idea of who the characters are in the poem, I think lends to that. You mentioned the hunters and the rabbits. I didn't really think about them as big figures in the story, but it is a poem of a location, and in that location you have time in the past. We're curious as to who was moving the pieces of the wall, how was this noticed. There's springtime that's mentioned, the spring outside and spring in me, and then you also have the dogs and mention of the rabbits, and there's the two humans across, and then the anonymous hunters as well. So this definitely is a poem about community in terms of people, community across time, community that is held together by a tradition even of maintaining this wall that, as if it were a game, is what is required in order for there to be neighbors at all. And we see that the two people who are one on each side, they're not in full agreement as to why they have to maintain the wall. So I think with community we have discussion, and we have a discussion inside, a dialogue, in fact. I think that's a good start to the understanding and appreciation of the poem. We could look at it in the framework of, is this really about community? What is community? What is it saying about community? Maybe we could go line by line.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe I'll read, and then when there's something you or I want to share, we could interrupt each other, and then you'll read the next few lines.
Yeah.
Okay. So something there is that doesn't love a wall, that sends a frozen groundswell under it, and spills the upper boulders in the sun. So just right there, maybe we could start, because I know you had something to say about the frozen groundswell. But here, I'm just struck by the syntax of it. Something there is that doesn't love a wall. Something that there is that doesn't love a wall. Is this a response already to a question? What would the question be? What is it that doesn't love a wall? Why are we talking about love in the beginning? The speaker, we have somebody who is trying to identify the origin of this thing that makes neighbors based on love. But we see later that he also assumes there must be somebody trying to destroy the wall. There's a cause for it, a negative, maybe malevolent cause. So he wants love there to be, but at the same time he assumes if there's love, there's also someone interrupting love, breaking love down brick by brick. So that is interesting, and the syntax is interesting. Plus this line repeats, so maybe we could return to that later.
Also, just to add on to that, one part that I like in that first line is like something there, and I feel like that's I think that ambiguity kind of removes him from responsibility, and so that, yeah, so I think, yeah, by removing himself from responsibility, that he can go ahead and start investigating what this wall really means, and he doesn't have any loyalty to it or attachment to it. And so I also like that part there, like something there.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I really think it's important striking that you say he's investigating, because we see later that at the end he believes that the man is of darkness. He moves in darkness, the other neighbor. You have something in your hat. Maybe you can. Oh, there it is, a fly. So I always thought of this guy as sort of an Enlightenment man. The Enlightenment man is a man of science and rationality. He tends to be as objective as possible. But at the backside of it, we realize, well, in science, how can we take accountability? All we could say is that our scientific methods were flawed. We didn't have a thorough enough of a protocol. There was some mishap in the conducting of the experiment. And we know that Enlightenment led to a dark Enlightenment. It led to over-rationalization and mechanization of humans, for example. Do you have anything else to say?
Maybe, yeah, I'll save it for later. Like, well, when they go through that, I don't know if I'm just jumping ahead, but when they go through that dialogue, like with he and the neighbor, do you think that kind of dialogue or that contrast is promoting community, or do you think it's what do you call it, compartmentalizing, isolating ourselves, like, okay, we are different, we are separated? But I feel like, but just from my stance, I just feel like the dialogue is good. Like, okay, people will be different, but yeah, people will be different, but we can coexist. That's maybe one take I got from the end.
I'm kind of a rhetorician in that I think that when people try to completely identify something, like totalize a definition and say the community is this or that without any space for questioning, then it's the end of community. And what ends up happening politically is that we try to identify something as it has to be this way, and we end up with this compartmentalization, as you say. But when we keep it open and we see that two people have differing views, then we have community. We have two different things. It's not a homogenized mass of people, I suppose. But why don't you read a few lines, continue from there, and spills the upper boulders in the sun.
And makes gaps even two can pass abreast. The works of hunters is another thing. I have come after them, and made repair where they have left not one stone on a stone, but they have left a rabbit out of hiding, to please the yelping dogs. If I could just go back to the last train of thought, like before, right after the semicolon, and he says right here, and makes gaps even two can pass abreast. That's the first part where I thought like, okay, maybe this is about like connection to other people, because this gap, the gap and the word abreast, like that means like two people can fit through this gap together. And so, okay, that was the first part that just made me think, okay, maybe this is about having connection with people, having connection to your neighbors, and that maybe the protagonist or the speaker of the poem kind of wants that connection. Yeah.
Right, I totally agree. And the fact that he describes that as gaps, because gaps is very general. We I guess we do say holes in arguments, but we also do say gaps in arguments also. And like the idea is that in the inconsistencies of that which we share, as in conversation, debate, and just regular discussion, yeah, two can pass abreast. I think it's key that the word is abreast rather than arm in arm. We don't have to be connected. We just have to be equal to one another. Breast to breast is like this, like same level. So I think that is a key phrase actually, and I'm glad we looked at it. And makes gaps even two can pass abreast. Yeah.
And then I think for like the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like the next 5 lines is about the relationship with the hunter, the rabbit, and the dog. And well, do you have an interpretation of like, or interpretation of those? Are they metaphors for something, or?
I think what's great about Frost is that he is very implicit. He doesn't outright state something as something. It's not metaphoric in that sense. It's not so clear as this is something else. It's just a substitute for another thing, a reflection of another, an analog, I suppose. So yes, I do think I think the work of hunters is ambiguous because we assume that there's somebody that is disassembling the wall. That's why it needs mending. And those could be hunters. So I think what's happening is that we see a parallel world of actual hunters who are hunting rabbits using dogs to please the dogs. And then we have hunters of the pieces of the wall that are maybe leprechauns or mysterious fairies or elves, as stated later. Some sort of presumed agent of change that is coming in and, yes, trying to destroy the boundaries between people, for better or worse, but also is the force that allows society to come together in the first place.
Well, I also wonder if this part suggests that the wall could be malicious, because hunters are using it to trap rabbits, or at least using the gap to trap rabbits. So I was thinking, oh, maybe that, because I think throughout the poem he's questioning the purpose of the wall, and then maybe that, like in this part, like, okay, maybe it could have some evil intent behind it.
I mean, Robert, the speaker may be innocent, but Frost is somebody who's creating this character for us to reflect on, and this character could be reflecting to us as social commentary the fact that those who speak in the name of enlightenment actually are agents of perversity. That what glitters is not always golden.
Yeah.
That there's a sharp, there's rust behind the mirror, in a sense, that you may see something beautiful, but you may cut your hands on the glass as well. So that could be a big part about it. And maybe Frost himself is saying that, yes, those who have goodwill, we learn later that the other man, his kind of collaborator, he is doing it in order to not go behind his father's back. He doesn't really participate in the conversation, yet he is a listener and the cause of the conversation to continue. So diversity has its place in maintaining discussion and the wall, but Frost does make the wall break down. He is suggesting also that the breakdown of the wall has its place also. So maybe things shouldn't be so consistent, because as you say, it could be used maliciously and may end up walling in things and bringing rabbits to their deaths, for example.
Yeah, I think at one point in the poem he also says like, well, what are we walling in and what are we walling out? Yeah, he's investigating it. And I think if I can just go to that next line, because I think he talks specifically about the gaps. So he says after we talk about the hunters, the gaps, I mean, no one has seen them made or heard them made, but at spring mending time we find them there. I wonder if he's suggesting that the gaps could be a good thing. I think that ambiguity is kind of like what propels him to continue to investigate. But I feel like when he uses the word "I," now he's included in the situation, and that now he has some sort of exigency, or he has some sort of connection to this wall, and so yeah.
I do want to say that I think he does involve himself earlier in the line before. He says, "I have come after them and made repair."
Ah.
So he is kind of saying that the work of the hunters is partly what's responsible for destroying this wall, and he's making repair after the thoughtlessness of the hunters who are just after their prey. And then the line you read, the gaps I mean, it's very colloquial and conversational. He's also involving us in it. He's speaking to us in a very conversational tone. The gaps I mean, no one has seen them made or heard them made, but at spring mending time we find them there. It's very like, oh my god, very colloquial and very conversational.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I think that the gaps, I mean, no one has seen them made or heard. We're not talking about the wall anymore. It's nice, it's interesting that Frost is making us focus on the gaps. He's continuing to focus on the gaps. It's called Mending Wall, but the point is the mending and the gaps themselves. The wall isn't alone in itself. A wall is there and it's maintained actively. And I think community itself has to have these traditions and this maintenance. And if we're seeing an Enlightenment project commentary here, we have the idea that we don't exactly know where we're from. We don't exactly know what's causing these things that trouble us, that perceive to trouble us. We're only presuming. We presume they're hunters. We presume they're possibly elves. We presume. And I think we shouldn't forget that. Maybe this is one of the points as a poem. We shouldn't forget that, yeah, we don't know where it's coming from. We are projecting also. Do you want to say something else, or can I read the next one?
We can go to the next one, yeah.
But at spring mending time we find them there. I let my neighbor know beyond the hill, and on a day we meet to walk the line and set the wall between us once again. Just really quickly, again, it's a tradition. It's something that happens again and again at a set time. And I think communities do need rituals and traditions, and I think this is what is slowly being extinguished from our society. Like local traditions, like local things we do, conventions, because we are being homogenized as a society. Everything is falling under algorithmic, predation. Yeah. And then this is kind of like, I like the whole like vicious undertone of the poem. The hunters with the yelping dogs, the conniving elves. You'll talk about it later about like Abel and Cain. Maybe there is this like ill intent behind things. Even the very first lines, something there is that doesn't love a wall, and it spills the upper boulders in the sun.
Or even frozen groundswell. Yeah.
Frozen. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, maybe you could read the next few lines.
Okay. Let's see. The wall between us again.
Once again.
Okay. We keep the wall between us as we go. To each the boulders that have fallen to each. And some are loaves, and some so nearly balls, we have to use a spell to make them balance. Stay where you are until our backs are turned. So I think at this point, a couple of takeaways. At this point in the poem, I think he's already finding separation between him and his neighbor. So there's, like, he's already decided that the wall creates a division. And one part that I like about, at least in these, like, last couple of lines, is that he just ends it with a period, with like a kind of a caesura. So that kind of shows his kind of conviction, and it just makes the wall a little bit more concrete. And so what I wanted to say about this is that, okay, he's kind of suggesting that the wall creates a division between two people, and that I think metaphorically the loaves and the balls, I think those are very what do you call it, to describe the boulders as the loaves and the balls is to as they begin to fall apart, maybe that there is connection, that because loaves representing food and nutrition and sharing. It has that allusion to. I think it has that allusion to the Bible where where you take the bread and you spread it amongst the people. Where Jesus, I think Jesus like spread like loaves and fish, right, to the other people, and so it's like about taking care of other people, and then the balls represent as as a toy, and it's like okay for enjoyment for other people. So I think that he's saying that as the walls fall apart, we can share this. We can share. We can take care of our neighbors. We can do, yeah, and that actually, in order to keep up the wall, maybe you have to force it by using something magical like a spell, and that maybe it's really absurd to have a wall.
Huh? That's a really good point. I didn't think about the balls as a toy or entertainment in this story. That a community is a place where we come together because of play and entertainment. We're more than just like mechanized cogs or mechanized subjects. We're more than subjects that had to be just separated and compartmentalized. We're people who actually are people of community inherently, and play is part of it. And the idea of like using a spell to make them balance in order to maintain community, in order to come together, we have to resort to non-scientific thinking. Whatever a spell may be, it's not scientific. And I think that is a stand-in and a stand-all for just the other modes of community that Enlightenment and scientific thinking cannot encompass and cannot make space for. Because if we just are rational about everything, we would be probably utilitarian about everything and just efficient about everything. And it's nice that the poem is also slowing us down. It's pondering with us. It's just like proposing all these alternative means of dealing with the things that are around the wall. That we do our job. In order to do our job, we have to play. Right? In order to make them balance, we need to say, stay where you are until we turn our backs. So, yeah, just stay there, because I know when I turn around, you're out of my control. So for now, please for now, he's like begging nature in order for it to be conducive to our will. But in order to do that, we have to be irrational also. Our will requires irrationality in order for us to come together. Yeah, this is a very nice part. To each the boulders that have fallen to each, and some are loaves and some so nearly balls, we have to use a spell to make them balance. Stay where you are until our backs are turned. We wear our fingers rough with handling them. Oh, just another kind of outdoor game, one on a side. It comes to little more. There where it is, we do not need the wall. We don't need the wall. It comes to little more. It is but an outdoor game. You're here, one player on a team, and I'm on another team. There may be opposition, there may be difference, but it is juxtaposition. It's still communing. Yeah. The lines of difference are the lines of connection, you could say also. And the game is to maintain the wall. Without traditions, we wouldn't come together. And we wouldn't have this tradition of building the wall if it weren't for some unknown force, being frozen groundswell, or the elves that come later, or that mysterious hunters, as malevolent as they are. But they do their job of feeding us. And we know we need sustenance nutritionally because we talk about the loaves also. So we do need to allow some menace. The menacing of rabbits in order to feed ourselves. You were going to say something?
Yeah, well, I also wanted to add too, because I really love the way you read it, was because you read it very playfully, like stay where you are until our backs are turned. We wear our fingers rough with handling them. Oh, just another kind of outdoor game. By reading it in that kind of tone, I think what Robert Frost is also suggesting is that as we force to have these walls, we have to construct them, and it takes like what's it called? It's like it takes labor and force, and it takes power to mend this wall, to fix this wall. But I think by being playful, he's able to manipulate what it means. He's able to manipulate what the wall means, despite as vicious and how dividing it could be, that by being playful, hey, this is the way that in some ways I can get around the wall. and I think it's just done. I think it's done here through the tone and the colloquialisms. Being playful is kind of a way to manipulate a situation or manipulate things in a different way, and that you're not controlled by the object anymore. By being playful, you have agency and you have ownership of your situation. And I think that's what I get out of that tone. I'm glad you read it that way. Yeah.
So play is a sort of creative freedom as well. And when you think of games and even like friendship, there are certain rules in place. Like I shouldn't lie to you, I shouldn't hit you, I shouldn't steal your things. There are certain rules in place. But in play as well, we are playing within rules. And true play is when you're playing with the rules. Like you change the rules if you want, and you make it in such a way that other people see that as commendable, amenable, as something they can participate in. So play is always also democratic too, because it's not me being totalitarian about things like, look, this is what I'm gonna do. This is just like malicious egotism. But if it's real play, then it's like we're gonna play together, and we can change the rules if you agree, if you want to agree. Not that I'm forcing you to agree. So in this, we have two people working together to maintain this tradition, which could be laborious and nothing but mechanism, but yet we have this playfulness that allows it to be magical at the same time. Can you read the next few parts?
Yeah.
On one side, it comes a little more, there where it is, we do not need the wall.
I think right here he's talking about his neighbor, right?
Yeah, he's about to. He is alpine.
He is alpine, and I am apple orchid. My apple trees will never get across and eat the cones under his pines, I tell him. He only says, good fences make good neighbors. Spring is the mischief in me, and I wonder if I could put a notion in his head. Why do they make good neighbors? When I look at these next couple of lines, I just go back to the motif of division and juxtaposition, and if you juxtapose the pines and apple trees, and I feel that I wonder if he's being disingenuous to his neighbor. If I'm reading pines as something prickly, and I don't know if it's an oversimplification, but like, yeah, orchids are usually associated with like harvest, like it has more positive connotations, and then pines has more negative connotations. And I was thinking like, well, by separating them, I wonder if he's giving a genuine, I wonder if he's portraying his neighbors genuinely. And so yeah, but I do like that. I think like juxtaposition is like a motif throughout this, especially when you're talking about a wall that divides things. I feel that it's really inconspicuous, and it's like, okay. So yeah, my takeaway from it is that maybe he's not giving his neighbor a fair shake of like who he is. Maybe it's a misportrayal. Maybe. I wonder.
Yeah. And he is kind of being he's kind of poking his neighbor too by giving him the more childish of interpretation. And then when he does allow this, when he shares what his neighbor is actually saying, which is good fences make good neighbors, it's very like stoic and very curt and unexplained. And then we get this verbose mischief from the speaker. Instead of just like letting things be, following tradition, it's tradition continued and set up by his father, the neighbor's father. So we have somebody who's the establishment, more of an established figure, more of a conservative on the other side. And maybe this is a commentary on politics, maybe. And we always have this mischief maker in the spring. And with spring, we have blossoms, we have blooming, we have revitalization of the earth. So in order to have and what that is always a prodding and a teasing and a misportrayal, as you said. I mean, a wall is kind of a misportrayal also of what makes us connected. Like, what makes us connected are differences, and a wall kind of is what separates one space from another space. It's like a fundamental boundary that brings people together to begin with. But anyways, to go back to the actual lines, He is all pine in an apple orchard. My apple trees will never get across any of the cones under his pines, I tell him. He only says good fences make good neighbors. Spring is the mischief in me, and I wonder if I could put a notion in his head. Why do they make good neighbors? Isn't it where there are cows? But here there are no cows. Before I built a wall, I'd ask to know what I was walling in or walling out, and to whom I was like to give offense. Something there is that doesn't love a wall, that wants it down. I could say elves to him. So here we have, of course, he's teasing, but he's being very rational about it. He's very reasonable. So he could be, if this is a political commentary, then we have on one side the establishment, the other side we have more of a shake-up, a shaker. And the shaker of the establishment, who wants to move things forward through discourse, has its reasons. And the question could be, are those reasons conducive to genuine community? We may have a disingenuine portrayal of the other person, but when do we ever get a genuine portrayal in public life? Because this is a private public moment. It's just two people, but that's the bare minimum of a community. Like, we're never a man alone.
And also too, like, I think he kind of gave his tail away when he was saying that the spring is the mischief in me, meaning that he's gonna play the fool, and like throughout this part, he's being kind of facetious and playful, and so he might be, what do you call it, purposely misportraying his neighbors, and also a good point that you made that I like was when you talked about the adage, good fences make good neighbors. By using like an adage or like a hackneyed phrase, it just reminds me that, oh yeah, that's considered law. Oh, that's lawful. And so what you do is you have that sharp contrast between like the lawful neighbor and the chaotic fool. And so I really like that. I really like that sharp contrast. And I think in connection to like a community, I think you probably need the chaos and the law in order, to have a balanced society. Maybe that's an oversimplification, but I just like that sharp contrast.
That is definitely a line of thought I'd like to pursue later sometime, because I feel that this is one of the points Frost may be trying to make, but I just don't know where to put it, like about the not tomfoolery, but the foolishness and the mischief making of him. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it required? Is it necessary? It sounds like it's a good thing, but also he is a mischief maker. But that mischief does help them bring the wall together. I mean, you have to ask also, if he wasn't making mischief, can we still maintain the wall? Can you still mend it without him? Because what if it were just two legalists? Just two people saying, we need good neighbors. It makes good neighbors. Just two of them. And then we could say, well, it would be a totally different poem. Maybe there would be no poem, in fact.
Without mischief, you can't go to the other side. Like, throughout the whole poem, he wants to connect with his neighbor.
Because he's the talky one.
Yeah,
and he's the one proposing alternative. Yeah, he's the imaginative one.
Yeah, and then maybe a little bit of mischief and chaos invites community and connection. Yeah.
Well, that's what I do want to say, but do you see invitation in here? Like, how is he inviting the other person? It's definitely for us to it's definitely easy to like see how that works in our lives, but is it actually in the poem?
Well, it's maybe he's doing it disingenuously again when he's asking the rhetorical questions. Is he? But I think one point that you made was that I think partially he's trying to understand his neighbor by making those questions, but I think it's when he says the cow, I feel that now it becomes a little bit facetious and it's a little bit, now he's just being kind of absurd and playful.
Yeah.
But the question itself still stands that, like having a good fence, maybe it keeps people out,
Also, I think that if it were just two of the other people, the other person, if somebody were to say straight away, why are we doing this? It gets a little confrontational. And at the end of the mischief part, he says, "Why do we make good neighbors? Isn't because of cows. Before I built a wall, I'd asked to know what I was walling in or walling out, and to whom I was like to give offense." So in the end of this mischief, he does have a a salutary pursuit. He wants to just ask. He also wants to just ask, "Why are we doing this? Isn't this isolating one?" Like he is kind of seeking justice before there's a need for reparation. He is trying to be fair also. But then if you were just to ask a straight question right out the gates, why are we doing this? It gets a little confrontational. So maybe the point is that in order to maintain open communications of lines and a relaxed demeanor across the aisles, you should have play. You have to introduce rhetorically serious matters, because if you can't, there are no ears to listen. So you have to open a conversation like this.
Well, if I can also add, like, where I also think that it's weird, it's strange that, yeah, he is being facetious, but at the same time, he's talking about a serious matter. So, for example, and he says, I could say elves to him, or sorry, let me take a step back. Something there is that doesn't love a wall, that wants it down. I could say elves to him, but it isn't not elves exactly, and I'd rather he said it for himself. I see him there bringing a stone grasped firmly by the top in each hand, like an old stone savaged arm. So if I could just go back a little bit, they're trying to figure out, well, what's tearing down this wall, and he playfully says elves. And I think by just kind of referring to the, can I say mythic creature? By referring to like I guess mythic creature, that he's not taking his neighbor's adage seriously, in that maybe, yeah. Because I think his neighbor wants logic and order, trying to figure out, well, what's taking down this wall? But he doesn't know himself, so he just has to say something as a substitute through magic. And by being absurd and suggesting magic, I think he's, I think again, like he's willing to. I think he's just willing to engage with his neighbors. Maybe that's the takeaway from it. Yeah.
I think the neighbor in himself would not engage. He just does what he's told. And then this guy is trying to engage.
Right.
The community will always have this sort of, not trade-off, but back and forth. There's always sort of an imbalance, a momentary imbalance. And whoever is speaking has the power of community, the power to like continue the conversation as well. And the seeking for like causes also. I wonder what the speaker's discontent is. He seems dissatisfied from the outset to just do things because that's the way things are done. He's seeking a cause for things, which you could say is a rational kind of cognition. Like you want to find a cause for effects in order to solve a problem. So the speaker is kind of coming from from our common sense view of trying to solve problems, and the other guy doesn't see a problem. He just knows that this is what's to be done, and maybe that is also a point of tradition. Tradition is already a solution. But also maybe Frost is saying in this time in our history in the world, like the actual world, that we're losing tradition. Said we have, but on the flip side, we do have a spring, the spring of mischief, and even with the dissolution and the lack of immediacy, the lack of immediate know-how and instinctual, like the know-how of how society reproduces itself, we still have the youth of spring. I mean, it doesn't mention their age, but I feel like the speaker is a younger person. He has a spring in him. And then he says that the other man brings a stone grasped firmly in each hand, like an old stone savage, armed. He moves in darkness, as it seems to me, not of woods only and the shade of trees, darkness of something else. He will now go behind his father, saying. So this is why I was like describing him as an enlightenment figure. He sees the other person in darkness. What do you think that means to see the man of tradition, the man of convention, the adage, the spokesperson for the community? Why is he seen as a savage in darkness? But it seems to me, at least the speaker is genuine about this, like he's self-aware. It seems to me alone, and because of that, as a mischief maker, I'm here to bring him to light, which seemed a little bit like colonialist. Which goes back to the line about, I want him to say it to himself. It's not elves exactly, and I'd rather he said it for himself. So it's like, yes, I want the other person to come to his own realization, but what if that person already is enough? Like the neighbor already, he doesn't need to see things in a different way. That's a common mistake in relationships.
But I think, I think the neighbor represents, going back to like lawful and tradition and rituals, and that maybe during those times they're kind of barbaric. Actually, when he says like he will not go behind his father's saying, and then the old stone savage arm, I believe that this is an allusion to Cain and Abel, and I think that's the part. I think there's a part where Cain strikes Abel with a stone, and he was banished. And he was banished from the land. So yeah, I think like because we were talking about how there's this viciousness underneath. There's this viciousness in the wall as it physically divides people, but also too the material that it's made with can also be used to harm others. It could be used to trap others. And I think towards the end of the poem, I think the speaker is realizing that, maybe we need the wall because my neighbor could have malicious intent. Like maybe he's coming to his senses that the wall serves the purpose a little bit. Like especially with the motif of viciousness occurring throughout the poem.
You mean to create a safe distance in order to protect himself?
To protect yourself, yeah. To protect himself, yeah.
So I do wonder when the volto is in the person's realization. Like when does the speaker start to realize that, the wall is here to serve a purpose. The wall is here actually to protect each other. To protect myself, at least, from him, this armed savage with a stone. Because he says, he has this kind of facetious playfulness. This mischief making is saying that there could be elves. There's no cows. But I want him to realize it himself. And then as soon as he says that, he sees him there bringing the stone. He says, I want him to see it himself. So in the meantime of playfulness and mischief, there's a realization while I'm saying this, I hope he could see it himself, that we don't, this man needs civilizing, basically. This man needs upbringing and training. I hope he could teach himself. But then maybe Frost is also saying that all this mischief making is unnecessary because it leads to the projection that the other man is evil. And this is what an overactive imagination leads to. Too much mischief. Maybe it's saying that on one side we have too much mischief, on the other side, because of that mischief, we have a reason for the wall. That the speaker comes to realize that, we need the wall because it protects us from each other. And he comes to that by being playful, through overactive imagination. And that's one side of the story. The other side of the story is that we just need to be good neighbors. Maybe, as you said, the speaker is conveying disingenuinely the neighbor, but Frost is ironically making the speaker kind of the bad guy of the story.
Right.
The irony.
And I'm trying to figure out where the turn in the poem where it's a little bit more explicit. I wonder if it's in the last like the last three lines. He will not go behind his father's saying, and he likes having thought of it so well. He says again, good fences make good neighbors. And I wonder, I'm trying to figure out, is this a threat? Is this threatening? I want to say I think it's a little bit threatening because of his indulgence with his own ego. The neighbor's indulgence in his own ego. Because he says he likes having thought of it so well. Although this might be a misportrayal from the speaker's point of view, assuming that this might be true, like the neighbor just likes to hear the sound of his own voice, it suggests that, yeah, maybe the neighbor could be a threat, or
Maybe he's trying to justify his suspicions also.
yeah.
Because you need to be careful of somebody who is so egotistical, who's going to be protecting himself so much, who will be armed with a stone. So this is why we need the wall.
And I also think being lawful usually comes with ego, because law can't change. Law usually doesn't change. So I assume that, yeah, you need to have kind of certainty and egotism for that to.
That's very interesting, yeah. Because the law is supposed to be objective and universal and apply to all, and the ego tries to do that everybody could be subsumable under the ego's terms and suppositions. But we know that egos they're not objective things. It's what we need in order to maintain ourselves in the face of others. But that's also the law. The law has its own arbitrariness also. Yeah. Anyways, I think this is a great discussion. I came to like this poem a lot more, and the irony of it, I didn't really see it until we started discussing it towards the end of it. Just seeing that, yeah, maybe we are witnessing how difficult it is for somebody to assess another person, and we have our own internal walls also.
And and also for me, a takeaway from the poem is that, a little bit of playfulness will help you overcome the wall, and that you won't, you're not impressed. I think one way to get around oppression is through play and creativity, and so that's a small thing that I got from the poem, especially when building relationships with other people.
Yeah, I mean, we could go on and on about that, because you did just bring me to another question as well. The creativity and the playfulness overcomes oppression, because it makes it a game, and it maintains convention or tradition and community. But in the end, we see that all that mischief led him to suspicions, and it justifies the wall. Also, maybe too much play is actual mischief. We do need this to protect ourselves.
Yeah. And the good thing about play and what you're talking about with conventions and rules is that through creativity and play is that if you follow the rules and you follow the conventions, it's like you're still playing with the material, and that now you can control it. Now it's not containing you anymore, and that.
Yeah.
So, metaphysically, I think creativity is the answer to law, something like that.
So we're not stuck in our egos.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you, John.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Look forward to another episode. Thank you so much.
See you.